All right. Yeah. Also, good afternoon from my side. This study was a qualitative as well as quantitative approach to answer the question if mindfulness training could influence the climbing performance. This topic is relevant in a couple of different ways. So first, mindfulness as well as climbing are both getting more popular in our culture. And in fact, the study from Wheatley already showed that mindfulness training already took a foothold in the climbing community. More relevant for elite sports is that in many sports, and as well as in climbing, performance is stagnating. And now new ways are being searched of how to push that performance just a little bit more. And sports psychology is one of those ways. And within sports psychology, mindfulness training is a new and promising candidate. The approach of mindfulness training differs from classical sports psychological techniques in that it does not try to change unwanted experience, but it tries to teach the athlete to observe unwanted experience in an equanimous and accepting way. This leaves the athlete with more psychological resources to focus on the task at hand and not fighting with oneself. Yes. There's also already a decent evidence base for the efficacy of mindfulness trainings in other sports, but not in climbing. The mechanisms of action include better emotional control, more focus, and more flow states. Exactly. Yeah. So to answer the question if climbing performance could be influenced by mindfulness training, it was first relevant to define the variables. This, especially mindfulness is a beast of a construct, but luckily I found an instrument, a comprehensive inventory of mindfulness experiences. And with this instrument, I could have a definition of mindfulness and as well measure mindfulness. This instrument looked at different other mindfulness questionnaires and extracted the most useful dimensions of mindfulness. Those were the following: awareness of internal experiences, awareness of external experiences, acting with awareness, having an accepting and non-judgmental attitude, being able to do non-reactive decentering, openness to experience, the awareness of one's thoughts, relativity, and insightful understanding. So when I talk now about mindfulness, I mean those 8 dimensions and the interplay between them. Climbing performance I defined in the following way. So I split it into 3 dimensions. First, performance, but from now I'm going to say Leistung. It has a different connotation in German. It's a more specific term. Safety behavior and psychological feeling. Each dimension I assessed with having different items. For Leistung, it would be climbing speed, workout scheduling, being able to focus on the route, visualization ability or route preview, climbing flow, not to be confused with flow, and body awareness. For safety behavior, it was general risk awareness and health and injury awareness. And for psychological feeling, it was frustration tolerance, fear handling, competitive behavior, flow states, mood, and resilience. I also assessed climbing rate, of course, and some co-variables like time spent climbing and how regular the subjects were climbing. So to my study design, I recruited 21 climbers from Innsbruck, and in the end, I could use the data of 9 of them. The high dropout rate was due to a lockdown that unfortunately launched at the exact same time as the study. To my examination procedure. So in the beginning, I had 2 questionnaires, the mindfulness questionnaire and the climbing performance questionnaire, and then 5 weeks of mindfulness training and regular climbing. The mindfulness intervention consisted of, as I said, 5 weeks, and they had to do 15 minutes of meditation every day, and then view 2 instructional meditation videos a week. After the intervention, they had to refill out the questionnaires, and I also interviewed them. Now that we know this, we can go on and specify the working hypothesis. And that was, is there a correlation between the change in mindfulness and the change in the dimensions of climbing performance? To the results. So mindfulness as well as climbing performance changed significantly. Performance, Leistung also changed significantly, but safety behavior and psychological feeling didn't. But as you can see on the graph here, and from the low p-value at psychological feeling, there was a certain trend visible. Climbing rate didn't change. Before it was 60 plus, and afterwards the same. To the results of the correlations. So there was no correlation between mindfulness and the difference between mindfulness and the difference between climbing performance. But again, as you can see, there's a certain trend visible, and there are also 2 outliers which might also affect the results. Of course, there was no correlation between mindfulness and climbing rate, because climbing rate didn't change. It was 60 plus, as I said. But there was a significant correlation between mindfulness and psychological feeling, as you can see here on that rather beautiful correlation. The covariables I searched, time spent climbing and climbing regularity, didn't seem to have any influence. To the results of the interviews. So most of the subjects, 8 out of 9, reported some sort of improvement, and they were different in nature, but the most frequently perceived changes were better focus, more awareness and control over inner experiences, more fun and experience while climbing, and better fear handling. Okay, so now to the discussion. First off, I have to reflect a little bit on the artificial nature of the methods. The splitting of climbing performance in the 3 dimensions is a little, yeah, as I said, artificial, especially between Leistung and psychological feeling. And I also assessed complex constructs such as resilience and flow with relatively simple methods, and this creates a natural blur which affects the results. Also, the questionnaires, the interviews painted a little bit of a different pictures than the questionnaires, and it became clear that the lockdown had a great effect on the climbers. So we have to be kind of skeptical about the results of the questionnaires. Now we can go on and discuss the results. First off, to the mindfulness, the change in mindfulness. I have trust that mindfulness changed because the instrument with which I examined that has good reliability and validity values, and it also was mirrored by the questionnaires, by the interviews. Sorry. Climbing performance, the dimension of the climbing performance were not as easy to judge, and in order to do that, I evaluated each item of each dimension with, of course, the questionnaires and the interviews, but also with help of existing literature and logical arguments. Lastly, I came to the conclusion that Leistung and psychological feeling could be influenced with a mindfulness intervention, but safety behavior could not. These results also fit into the existing findings of meta-analysis from who looked at other sports, and those meta-analysis always pointed out that the methods could be improved as the studies, and I guess mine could be too. I also have some suggestions for future similar studies. That would be, of course, a longer intervention and a bigger sample size. And then, as I said, the borders between psychological feeling and Leistung are somewhat arbitrary, so those can be pooled. Live meditation sessions, I found, and other studies as well, could greatly benefit compliance. And yeah, so for now, we can say that mindfulness training can be used as an additional sport psychological technique, but with more evidence, it might play a bigger role in the training program of future athletes. So yeah, thank you for your attention. Oh, and one last personal concern. Please treat meditation as a serious practice. It's not some hippie woo stuff. It's a serious attempt to befriend oneself and to discipline the mind. So yeah. Cheers.
Okay, great, Daniel. Thanks a lot. Who has a question for Daniel?
What is Leistung performance? Because the grade didn't change, but the performance did.
Sorry again.
Because you said that performance changed, but the grade, like the time grade didn't change.
So the Leistung was not just wasn't like physiological parameters, and it wasn't the climbing rate. It was, as I said, the items like visualization ability and workout scheduling, like abilities or skills that would contribute to Leistung or performance. So it's not the same as climbing performance, how I defined it. But as I said, the definition of those dimensions is a little vague and might be needed to be optimated. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have another question?
It was more or less the same. Did you discuss with the participant how they define themselves a climbing performance?
Yes, but like in the interviews, I went over all the items from climbing performance from Leistung, and some said, like on some, like for example, visualization ability, a couple participants said that something changed, and some did not. Or did I understand your question correctly?
It was just to know if, when I do meditation, if I have my own definition of what is climbing performance, it might change the way I do meditation. Because if meditation is really applied to what I will do, like climbing, or so how do I define or how do I understand performance in climbing, and how it affects the way I do meditation? If you're looking at the correlation between those two, I was wondering how performance in climbing is understood by the participants themselves.
Oh, okay, yeah. That I didn't ask. No.
It could be interesting, even if it's not studied in your research.
Yeah, interesting point. Yeah.
It's a large. It's always a debate to define what is performance in climbing.
Yeah.
Because you talk about speed at some point. I talked this morning about fluency. He's talking about the grade of difficulty. So many aspects can influence the performance.
Yes.
And the way you do meditation might influence by how you perceive the performance in climbing.
You can address specific dimensions of performance with a specific alteration of mindfulness or meditation, or like the question. Okay.
I'm not a specialist.
Yeah, he's studying his master now, so that's a good way to take that up for your next research work. So thanks a lot, Daniel, again. And,